Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnline. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, having spent time with the Bucks, Suns, and Knicks. And I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner, who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN, producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. And we're also joined by the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Mikal Worldby Freer, who is a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 118, the Phil Jackson episode, as the Zen Master wore number 18 for 10 seasons as a member of the New York Knicks. But before we get started with tonight's show, just a quick reminder. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use promo code BLEAV, that is BLEAV, and get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. And speaking of starts, fellas, we are one step closer to the start of the NBA season as the league has announced the 2024-2025 full season schedule. So to all our listeners or viewers out there, get your pencils ready and start circling some dates, because we are going to dive right into the games that we're looking forward to most. And World B, I'll let you start us off here tonight.
Well, thank you, guys. Well, the first one that really jumped out, the first one I was interested in when the schedule came out was, when are the Knicks and 76ers going to meet up? Because that was such a terrific first-round series. And so the first one I have circled is November 12th. New York goes to Philadelphia. Not only is this a rematch of, really good first-round series, a lot of excitement, it's also the Villanova group for the Knicks, the full as a whole now, if you will, return to Philly. It's going to be interesting to see their reaction that they get coming back to Philadelphia. Plus, these are two teams that should be on paper really big-time contenders in the Eastern Conference. So that's one that was the first one I was looking at.
That's a good selection there. And let's not forget, Mikal Bridges' mother used to work for the 76ers. So some ties there as well outside of just Villanova. Good choice there will be. Bruce?
Well, I'm going to start with the Spurs against the Thunder on October 30th. Victor Wembanyama versus Chet Holmgren. Wemby, the unanimous Rookie of the Year last season, while Chet was the almost unanimous runner-up. Brandon Miller got one second-place vote. OKC is expected to be one of the top 2 teams in the Western Conference, while the Spurs are hoping to make the play-in. I think it's going to be a really interesting test for both teams. I've said since the Summer League that I believe Stephon Castle, the Spurs rookie, will be this year's Rookie of the Year. And the addition of Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, which I'm going to talk about a little later on in the show, are going to provide a real boost to a young Spurs team. OKC adds Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, 2 huge pieces to bolster the Thunder, as they hope to be the top team in the Western Conference. And I think, Ross, we have something in common with this game, do we not?
We sure do. I mean, just 3 games into the season, taking a look at that schedule, seeing this matchup, and I had to choose it as well. The fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder added a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein should be interesting to see him go up against a guy like Victor Wembanyama. Nice that Chet has some help down low on Victor now, so he's going to be managed by both of those two. But, I mean, going back to what World B and I discussed about the 2028 Olympic preview last show, I mean, this is an early glimpse of what we could be seeing in 4 years in Olympic play as well. Chet for Team USA, Victor for France, 2 extremely talented young bigs that obviously size up quite well against one another. No one quite at the level of Wemby and his stature, but Chet's the closest thing out there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing those 2 young teams battle it out. And of course, the Thunder are more established, ready to win now, but the Spurs are on the cusp. They're coming, and anything is possible when Wemby is on your squad. Bruce, how about you give us your second team that you have circled?
Opening night, Knicks versus Celtics, October 22nd on TNT, kicking off their final season doing the NBA. It's banner and ring night. TD Garden will be rocking as banner number 18 is raised to the rafters. The Knicks see themselves as the number one challenger to Boston in the Eastern Conference, and they're hoping to make a real statement and spoil Boston's special night. And if the Knicks take this game, especially if they win convincingly, it's on, baby.
I like that one. And I've got that one circled already, just being colleagues with the both of you. I mean, that's the one night you guys aren't on speaking terms, so I have to be mindful of that. World B, what's your second pick?
I'll always be on speaking terms with World B. We may be throwing swears at each other, but that's speaking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I refuse to not be on speaking terms on a game in October, first of all. So
good point.
I'll pace myself as far as that goes. That being said, one of the other games, obviously, for me, my last Knicks game that I have circled here, but it's actually 2 games before the Knicks travel to Philly. They go to Indiana, which is a nice back-to-back road games for them. But again, it's another rematch of that series, Eastern Conference semifinals at the Pacers, won in 7 games, win a blowout fashion in the Garden in Game 7. Big surprise to many, not necessarily that they won, but although I was surprised, but the way they did, they basically blew them out from start to finish. So that's going to be interesting because Knicks Pacers, that was a rivalry back in the 90s. It kind of lost a little bit. We saw it in, I believe it was 2012 when the Pacers eliminated the Knicks again. And this past season when the Pacers did again. So it'll be interesting to see what the Pacers have because as I mentioned, the Knicks look like they're loaded for a challenge to the Celtics. The Celtics aren't going away. The Bucks are going to be back. The 76ers look loaded. Where do the Pacers fit in? It's an early season game. So, it's a long season. It's a marathon. But that first meeting should be really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun in that one as well. I definitely agree that's going to be a must-watch game. So for my first pick, I had an October 30th game, and not really flipping the calendar here. I'm going to the next night, Thursday, October 31st. The Milwaukee Bucks visit the Memphis Grizzlies, and I promise this is not just a Gigi Jackson-Giannis matchup joke being inserted by me, so hear me out. This will be the last game of the Bucks' 3-game road trip, where they'll start the trip with a warm-up game in Brooklyn. Then they'll head on to Boston to face the defending champs, and then they actually conclude the 3-game set where they'll have to face the Grizzlies in Memphis. And let's not forget, last year the Grizzlies beat the Bucks in both meetings, despite Memphis being extremely shorthanded. So the Grizzlies should no longer be shorthanded, and this is an early season matchup of 2 teams that are really looking to bounce back next season. So both teams feel like they're being slept on at the moment. I mean, lots coming out of both camps that don't sleep on the Grizzlies, don't sleep on the Bucks, and both have a lot to prove. Milwaukee certainly hasn't forgotten last year's struggles against the team, but Ja Morant and company are back healthy. So it's going to be a dogfight filled with a ton of great matchups. Ja versus Dame, Bane versus Gary Trent, Jaren Jackson Jr. defending Giannis, and maybe we'll even see some Brook Lopez versus Zach Edey, which could be a lot of fun as well. So, of course, we'll also sprinkle my guy Gigi Jackson in there as the ultimate sweetener. But that should be a fun early game matchup.
That
Bruce,
was subtle there, by the way, Ross.
What, the Gigi Jackson?
Gigi Jackson. Yeah. That was about as subtle as a toothache.
Yeah, well
done.
Hey, and you know what? Maybe Marcus Smart will get a little bit of time checking Dame too. So I mean, there's a lot to like in that game, really.
Yep. Bruce, what do you have for number 3?
I got October 23rd, the second night of the season, the ESPN's first night of coverage. Suns versus Clippers. The Intuit Dome hosts its first regular season NBA game. The $2 billion arena has some really cool design features, including fresh outside air for all of the seats, which should be pretty cool. It'll be the venue for the 2026 All-Star Game and the 2028 Olympics basketball games. And the digital screen above the court has 44,000 square feet of display space. I saw a rendering of it. It's like unbelievable. The arena seats 17,700. It's in a deep bowl, giving fans a closer than typical view of the court. And oh, by the way, these two teams could both be, look, I expect the Suns to be better than they were last year. The Clippers, I'm not so sure about. But just to me, you don't watch a game for an arena, but for the debut of that arena, I think it's definitely worth watching. Just to hopefully ESPN will do a nice job giving us a tour of that place and showing us all the cool aspects of it.
Yeah, no doubt. And that sure smells like a game we might need to do on playback, because we'll have the League Pass Premium and be able to see the inside of the building during commercial breaks. So that could be a lot of fun. And don't forget, Bruce, they also have cannons in the Jumbotron that shoot T-shirts to the upper deck, which I thought was a cool addition.
Oh, man, that's great.
Yeah, so they're reaching the upper levels now. That's next level thinking there by Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. So hats off to them. World B?
The next one I had circled is November 23rd, the Denver Nuggets at the Los Angeles Lakers. To be the first meeting since the first round series last season when the Nuggets eliminated the Lakers. But, if you go back and you remember that series, the Lakers had that lead in half in all 5 games, and yet they lost the series. So it's going to be an interesting thing. You have the Lakers who can't, been eliminated by the Nuggets each of the last 2 playoffs. And if LeBron has one more run in him, we don't know how many years he has left, but if he has one more run in him, they're going to have to do something about getting past the Nuggets at some point. You figure they got either in the regular season establish that, or in the postseason. So plus it's a rematch of Serbia versus the United States from the Olympics with that great game that we saw in the semifinals of the Olympics basketball event. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That should be a lot of fun. Nuggets Lakers. It's really hard to go wrong as far as a West Coast game.
No, and speaking of entertainment in that one, Russell Westbrook versus the Lakers is a lot of fun too, as he's now a Denver Nugget, and of course loves playing the Lakers because things didn't really work out too smoothly with him as part of that organization. So good point there, Bruce.
For the first time in a while, I think we're actually kind of sleeping on the Lakers a little bit. Usually we kind of overestimate them. This year, I think, we're not really feeling the Lakers, and that could make them a bit more dangerous. I mean, based on how AD and LeBron played in the Olympics, again, now if they, rest up nice until training camp, I don't know. We might have to, we might be sleeping on them is all I'm saying.
Yeah, good point there, and certainly something we'll have to examine early on in the season with their new head coach, JJ Redick. World B, you brought up a fine point about eliminated teams facing off against one another. I've got one on Sunday, November 17th, as the Minnesota Timberwolves will host the Phoenix Suns. The Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, just spent a successful summer hanging out with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, winning Olympic gold with Team USA in Paris, France. But that brotherhood comes to a halt on November 17th as the Suns, now equipped with a point guard in Tyus Jones, get their first crack at revenge and try to beat the Wolves after being swept by them in last year's playoffs. So a true good test of 2 Western Conference teams battling it out. Really looking forward to seeing how Anthony Edwards comes out in that one against his former Team USA teammates. Obviously, there was a lot of jawing in last year's playoffs, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of jawing in this matchup too. So should be a lot of fun. Bruce, number 4?
My next game is the NBA's equivalent of a World Wrestling Entertainment grudge match. Warriors versus Celtics, November 6th.
Okay.
Steve Kerr, Warriors coach, benched Jason Tatum for 2 entire games in the Olympics, and that did not sit well with Boston fans. I'm sure they're going to give Steve a very warm reception and let him know exactly how they feel. While Tatum took the high road in his comments about sitting out the games, would anyone be surprised if he drops a 40 burger on the Dubs? Maybe a 50 burger? Actions speak louder than his conciliatory words. So that is why I've got that one circled. I can't wait to see how JT comes out in that.
Yeah, I got a couple of prop bets on the fly for you here. Are you taking the over then, no matter what it is, on Jason Tatum points for the game?
Well, unless the over's 49, I would probably say yeah.
And then the last one for you, who hits more threes? The Boston Celtics as a team or Buddy Hield?
Now, if you say Buddy and Kerr together, that might be closer.
Yeah, okay. World D?
Yeah, by the way, Jaylen Brown probably has that game circled too, just so you know. He had plenty of time to stew on that matchup when it came out. Next matchup for me is Christmas. Lakers at Warriors. I know we talk about neither team is really in the elite category of the Western Conference. It's so strong, whatever. But as long as you have Steph, as long as you have LeBron, as long as you have Draymond Green, Steve Kerr, as long as the names are still there, it's a worthwhile matchup. And I'm looking forward to it because, how many more games like this are we going to have between Steph and LeBron and stuff? These are two franchises that perhaps, I know Bruce said don't sleep on the Lakers, and I don't disagree, but there's only so many years we have left with these guys on the court. So having them together on Christmas Day, that should be fun.
Yeah, definitely a basketball fan gift by the NBA, putting those two teams clashing on Christmas Day. Now, a lot of people are saying people are sleeping on the Bucks. I am not one of them because Tuesday, January 28th, the Milwaukee Bucks will face the Portland Trailblazers in Portland. And this game warrants the current scheduling on TNT as Damian Lillard gets a crack at redemption in a homecoming game. Let me remind you that last year the Bucks lost a close one in Portland last year in Dame's first return against the Blazers, 116-119. Dame was recently questioned whether or not he feels his body is breaking down, which was immediately dismissed by Dame. And not just the Bucks, but Dame have a lot to prove this year. And I think Dame's got this one circled. The Bucks should certainly have this one circled. Losing that game last year should be all they need for Dame and the Bucks to go off in Portland. And once again, a little sweetener, Scoot Henderson's playing. So count me in. Bruce, last but certainly not least, what do you got?
Before I get to my last game, last week when we were in Utah at a wedding, we went rafting on the Weber River. Weber as in Weber State, where Dame went to college. So I was talking to the tour guide. I said, there's a very famous basketball player who went to school around here. He said, Damian Lillard, blah, blah, blah. I figured this guy knew nothing about the NBA because he just seemed like, one of these guys who hangs out on rafts and, Anyway, So it was cool. I said, okay. I felt a little bit closer to Dame going rafting on the Weber River in Utah. So anyway, nobody cares about that, but, whatever. My fifth and final game also involves the Golden State Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks, November 12th. Klay Thompson returns to the Bay Area after 13 seasons, 6 trips to the NBA Finals, 4 championships. I would imagine the fans will give him an ovation so long and loud that it could very well bring him to tears. I'm really looking forward to seeing what his role will be as he joins a team with future Hall of Fame guards Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Will he start at the 3? That seems likely, and while he can still stroke it with the best of them, after all of his injuries, Klay will really have to show that he can move well enough to guard forwards. He turns 35 in February, so that will be a nice early look at what his role is with the Mavericks.
Yeah, hopefully he shoots better than 0 of 10 in his next game at the Chase Center. Will be?
Yeah, the final game I have is on November 6th. The Philadelphia 76ers travel to play the LA Clippers as the matchup we all want to see, the reunion of Nick Batum facing his old team, the 76ers.
Yeah, nice.
And Paul George will be back and playing against the Clippers, his former team too. I suppose that's a big deal too. But Paul George was supposed to be one of the pieces that turned the Clippers into a NBA title contender, and it just never materialized because of injuries, because of whatever, a tougher conference. But he gets to make his trip back there, and it should be fun. It'll be a lot of eyeballs on him, and we'll see where he is. It's early enough in the season where hopefully neither he or MD will have broken down yet, so but they'll both be able to play, and it should be a fun night to watch.
Just a note about the 76ers. On Monday, I read that they have signed Guerschon Yabusele, who played for the France Olympic team, former first-round draft pick of the Celtics. I mean, watching him in the Olympics, he was a beast. And I mean, physically, I definitely got a Ben Wallace vibe checking him out with the headband and the big throw. So, I mean, he gives them some interior toughness that I think will really help that team, a good physical presence. He's not really a center, but I mean, he's a big enough guy where he can, probably spell Joel Embiid a little bit. So I think that's an underrated pickup for the Sixers.
I would agree, Bruce. I think that's going to be a lot of fun to see what Yabusele can bring to Philadelphia, and certainly fills a need for them. But in that matchup that World B brought up with the Clippers, I mean, he's going to have his hands full with former Sixer Mo Bamba, who signed with the Clippers in the offseason. So be careful. I mean, he's going to have his work cut out for him in that one. Now, for my last game, I might be going off the beaten path here on this one, but on Saturday, March 1st, the Sacramento Kings will pay a visit to the Houston Rockets. And this is a matchup of two Western Conference teams wrestling for playoff spots, I would imagine, at this point in time. And while Sacramento may have just made their most aggressive move in the offseason this year by adding DeMar DeRozan, this game comes right after the NBA deadline. And I think that's important because I wouldn't be surprised if the Houston Rockets make a significant splash before the deadline passes. With the amount of young talent they have, they're looking to be a little bit more aggressive. I could see them maybe making a splash, and this one being a very interesting matchup later on this spring. So those are some fun games. I hope all our listeners have circled their calendars and have those written down. I'm sure we'll have to check back in on these. And with that, we're going to take a quick break and get back to you with what we see as the best offseason moves right after this. And we're back here. And fellas, let's talk a little bit about the best offseason moves that we saw around the league. And there were quite a few of them. So lots of options here. Bruce, I'll start with you.
Okay, I'm going to start with the OKC Thunder. And it's really two moves, but I'm combining them in like teams that made a move here.
Yep.
Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso joined this team. I love both of these pickups. OKC was 27th in rebounds and 27th in rebound differential at minus 2.6. Hartenstein averaged more than 8 rebounds in 25 minutes of playing time for the Knicks last season. And even when he didn't secure the rebound himself, he had active hands that kept the ball alive and led to extra possessions for his team. And I expect this to be a significant factor for OKC this year as they try to ascend to the very, very top of the West. Caruso, a total pest on defense. He's made all defensive twice in his career. He's capable of making threes at a solid clip, just under 41% last season. He's got a championship ring with the Lakers in 2020. He brings veteran presence to a fairly young team. And he was the last NBA player to wear number 6, which was retired by the NBA in honor of Bill Russell. And he will wear number 9 for the Thunder. OKC, by the way, is my pick to come out of the West this season.
All right. Good choice there. Will be.
Well, sticking with my hometown theme, I think the Knicks acquired Mikal Bridges was one of the best moves this offseason. It really, if you're going to compete against the Celtics, you need really good play on the wings. And now with Mikal Bridges and the re-signing of OG Anunoby, they have 2 wings, which they hope can at least match up favorably with Tatum and Brown, which is, that's, if you want to stop the Celtics, that's what you have to do. So, the Knicks are now, I know everybody, the theme about all the Villanova guys or whatever, and that's fine. It's good for a copy and everything. But the fact is, this team now is as deep as they've been in a couple of decades, to be honest now. I mean, it's really been a long time since the Knicks had this much talent on their team. And now Mikal Bridges doesn't have to be the guy like they wanted him to be in Brooklyn, where he had nice numbers, but he never really played like the guy. Now he doesn't have to be. They have Jalen Brunson. They have Julius Randle. They have guys who are all-stars for the Knicks. So now Mikal Bridges can be a big-time performer, but not the guy. And like I said, it's been over a decade at least since the Knicks had this deep a team. And I think he's going to thrive in that scenario. And that's why they're seriously a contender in the East against the Celtics.
Well, B, I have a question for you. So with Brunson, with Josh Hart, with Mikal Bridges, and with Dante DiVincenzo, are they going to go with a Wildcat lineup at some point this season, not unlike the death lineup that the Warriors used to feature?
I'd put nothing past it. It's been set up this way. I'm waiting for Jay Wright to take over as a coach and for a week or something like that. It's the way things are going with this team. It's all fun and games and everything, but Dante and Josh Hart, two key guys in their starting lineup in the playoffs, now go back to where they were originally penciled in as before all the injuries happened. That's coming off the bench and solidifying a really good bench group for them. So I'm excited about. It's been a long time since I was this excited about watching the Knicks play.
Yeah, Will B, I got a follow up for you too. Walt Clyde Frazier last week came out and said he sees a lot of similarities with this current group of players to his championship team. What are your thoughts on the legend saying that?
Well, I appreciate it. That sounds really good, but we haven't seen these guys play yet. I mean,
Sure.
If you go based on just what they did with in the Villanova days, it's hard to argue. They play well together. I mean, you watch the guys without Mikal Bridges play last year during the playoffs. It was really impressive that it was a very unselfish team. They knew Jalen Brunson was the guy that had to have the ball in his hands, but Dante DiVincenzo was the man at times. Josh Hart was amazing playing as many minutes as he did. So, I mean, the unselfishness of this team is probably where he was going with that, I assume, because that's how this group is. And I'm sure Mikal Bridges will not do anything but add to that level of team play, whatever you want to call it. But if from that standpoint, I can see it. Other than that, let's see him actually play first.
No doubt. Definitely agree with you there. Now, for one of my favorite offseason moves, it's the Phoenix Suns finding a way to sign Tyus Jones, because given their salary cap situation, it virtually seemed impossible to add a quality point guard onto this roster with where salaries sat. But, yes, Devin Booker did a great job filling in as the primary ball handler in Phoenix. But if we learned one thing about Book this summer in France during the Olympic play, it's that he can also be a defensive impact when he chooses to be. And limiting the ask of him to create so much off the dribble for this Suns team and allowing Booker to utilize some of the energy on the defensive end, not to mention adding Tyus Jones should also, provide him with more open catch and shoot opportunities. It's going to be a lot of fun to see Devin Booker play with a point guard again, because he sure had a lot of success playing with a point guard in Chris Paul. So obviously I'm not comparing Jones to Paul, but just having a quality point guard, I think will work wonders for the Phoenix Suns, and more specifically Devin Booker coming off a really good summer with Team USA. Bruce?
I'm going to be talking about the Spurs and their moves. But before I do, I wanted to shout out to Spurs superfan Mark Burnett. He's a friend on Facebook. He had a little contest where he wanted, his friends on Facebook to post pictures of themselves with Spurs players, whatever. And he chose myself and another guy. I think his name is George Garcia. And he said he's going to be sending me a Victor Wembanyama gift pack, which has some kind of cool souvenirs in it. Mark, I want to thank you for your generosity. I hope that you're listening. And thank you so much. And I promise once I receive that, I'll do a show and tell in a few weeks so that Ross and World B can see it. And those of us who watch us on my YouTube channel will see it also. So, Mark, thank you very much. And welcome to the 48 Minutes family if you choose to be a member. Yeah. As for the Spurs, Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes join the team and immediately become the two oldest players on the roster. CP3 is 39, and while Barnes seems like he's been in the league forever, this will be his 14th season, he won't even turn 33 until late May. So, I mean, he's not really that old. This will be CP3's 20th season. He played his first NBA game in 2005. His teammates Wemby and Stephon Castle were both 1 year old when Chris Paul made his NBA debut. Greg Popovich and team president R.C. Buford clearly understand chemistry better than most, and the mentorship that these two graybeards provide will be huge as the Spurs try to climb the ladder from last season's second consecutive 22-60 season into a possible play-in berth out west. And I, for one, am rooting for them to make the play-in tournament. I don't know if their ceiling's any higher than that, but if they can do that, it will be an amazing success. And yes, Stephon Castle is my pick for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, the Spurs are going to be a lot of fun for a lot of reasons outside of Wemby. Obviously, he brings a ton to the table, but there are other factors on that team worth monitoring. So couldn't agree with you more there, Bruce. Will be?
I think Paul George going to the 76ers may have been the biggest offseason free agent signing we had in the league. I think if nothing else, I don't know if it's enough to get over the hump against the Celtics necessarily, but it may. It can at least get them to the conference finals. They have a good shot at something like that, which they haven't done in years, certainly not in Embiid's time. I think what this shows is at least the 76ers are doing what their best they can to not waste another prime season of Joel Embiid. And we talked about this during the offseason last season when the James Harden saga was going on, and we were worried that if that dragged down before he was traded, that it would just waste another prime season of Joel Embiid, who was coming off at that point an MVP year. So the health is still a concern for these two, particularly Embiid. We don't know how many years, good years he has left. Paul George is in his mid-30s, so he's got 4 years though, and over $200 million. So and he has yet to go to a final. So I think there's motivation on everybody to try and win here. And say what you want, but credit goes out to the front office there for at least trying to put somebody around Embiid who wants somebody there long term. He has said this. He said this after he got eliminated by the 76ers. He's looking at the Celtics and their players who have been there for years. He's looking at the Warriors who have players there for years. He wants to see somebody with him develop and grow as a team for years. So at least he should have Paul George for 4 years, and maybe they get a trip to the finals out of it at some point.
Yeah, no, I think there's no doubt that Paul George was the diamond of this year's free agent class, and a lot of credit should go to the Philadelphia front office for landing a talent like Paul George to team up with Joel Embiid, and certainly excited to see what that duo, along with Tyrese Maxey, are able to do next year in Philly. Now, I'm sticking out east as well, and I've got to go with the Milwaukee Bucks, adding Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince out on the wings. Both are significant upgrades over Malik Beasley, who had the opportunity of a lifetime last year with the Bucks and let it slip through the cracks. He had one job, and that is to knock down open three-pointers. With the amount of attention Dame and Giannis attract on the help side, all he needed to do was knock down threes. Not only do I believe Trent and Prince are both up for that task of knocking down threes consistently when it's needed, but both bring so much more defensively on the other side of the ball. Trent is one of the best in the league at collecting steals, and Taurean Prince is just a solid veteran defender. So between those two guys, I think they're going to pay big dividends for the Bucks this next season, and will likely deserve a lot of the credit along with better play from Dame and Giannis duo. So keep an eye on the Milwaukee Bucks and those small but significant additions. Bruce?
My final selection is the Orlando Magic signing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He brings two things to Orlando that they lacked last season. The 31-year-old begins his 12th NBA season. He will bolster the Magic's three-point shooting. He hit nearly 41% from downtown last season and joins a Magic team that was 24th out of 30 teams from downtown. He also takes care of the ball extremely well, averaging just one turnover a game for a Magic team that was 24th worst in turnovers. He's also got not one, but two championship rings, Denver in 2023 and LA in 2020. So his playoff experience will be valuable for a young Orlando squad. And only KCP and Corey Joseph are 30 years old or more on that team. So I would imagine he's going to step right into a leadership role for those guys.
Yeah, KCP is going to make a world of difference with Orlando. I'm sure you agree there will be. And hopefully Bruce didn't steal your last and final one. Who do you got for us?
No, unless he was going to take Josh Green going to the Hornets, then he didn't steal. But no, I think in terms of name value, Klay Thompson's name was probably the biggest one out there. Him and Paul George, arguably the biggest free agents out there in terms of name value. So Klay Thompson leaving Golden State and going to the Mavericks for super duper bucks. And actually, I guess it was a sign and trade with Golden State. It wasn't really a straight up free agent signing, but Klay got his money. And I think it's an interesting pickup as long as not too much is expected of Klay Thompson at this stage of his career. Injuries, I've mentioned this before, injuries have really reduced him to basically being a three-point specialist. Last year, he took about 60% of his shots were threes, a career high. but he's going to a team that loves to shoot the three. Only the Celtics had a higher percentage of their field goal attempts come from 3-point range than the Mavericks, who are like 44% of their shots. So I see him being a decent fit for Dallas as long as he's not expected to be part of, as you mentioned, a big three like Philadelphia has with Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey. He's not. I don't think he's at that level anymore. He's on the back nine of his career, as it were. But I think there's still plenty of value to him. And honestly, I think even though Derek Jones Jr. is gone from the Mavericks team, I think the guys that they picked up in Dallas, Najee Marshall, to go along with Luka, to go along with Kyrie, Gafford, Derek Lively, I think this team, along with Klay Thompson, I think this team has a chance to be even deeper than last season's team that made a run, obviously, to the NBA Finals. They have a shot if Klay is used properly, and he can obviously be a major contributor for that team.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue against the Mavericks getting better this year. They've added shooting, which they desperately needed, and Derek Lively, I mean, he showed a ton of growth throughout the season. He shined at times throughout the playoffs, and he's going to be in year 2. So he's had a full offseason to not only work on his game, but his body. So keep an eye on him too.
Yeah. And by the way, think about this too. I talked about how the injuries have really reduced Klay Thompson's effectiveness. He was 33 years old last season. He came off the bench at times. They reduced him to a bench role. He still averaged 18 points a game. He still shot 39%. 2 years ago, he shot 41% from 3-point range. He still has the touch. He still had and I'm sure there's motivation this offseason to really get himself in shape. That first year off a free agent sign, we see a lot of players come in motivated, come in ready to go in the best shape of their careers. If he can stay healthy, I think he's going to have a really good, at least first season for that team.
Great point there. Now, for my final one, I've got the Sacramento Kings adding DeMar DeRozan and retaining Malik Monk. DeRozan brings more veteran leadership to a team that desperately needs it, and yet another clutch player to turn to down the stretch in games, which you can never have too many clutch players that you can rely upon late in games, late in shot clocks, things of that nature. And too many times last season, the team looked dead without Malik Monk out there on the floor. They brought him back knowing his importance to this team. Guys like De'Aaron Fox voiced their opinions on bringing Monk back at the end of season interviews. And then adding DeMar DeRozan, I think, just helps this team stay in the playoff mix. We've taken a look at the Western Conference landscape. It's not going to be easy, but I think with a guy like DeRozan, they stay in the thick of things to give themselves a chance. And if this team can, score the basketball up and down the floor, run you out of the building, and, even in games where they're not scoring that well, if they can stay close in games down the stretch, they've got fourth quarter Fox and De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, and Malik Monk. All bets are off. I mean, they're going to have chances to win games and maybe even possibly steal games should they make the playoffs. So should be a lot of fun with the Beam team next year in Sacramento. Now, we're going to take our last break here, and when we come back, we're going to discuss some WNBA basketball and maybe even an NBA wedding right after this. And we're back here, and I feel like it's only right here on tonight's podcast that we discuss the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark. Obviously, a big win for the Fever on Sunday afternoon over the Seattle Storm, and a little drama at the end of the game there as well, but Caitlin Clark continues to roll after her snub as an Olympic Team USA participant. She broke the record for WNBA rookie assists and also leads the league in assists for any of those that didn't know that. So, Bruce, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this rookie campaign from Caitlin Clark?
Well, watching her on Sunday, I was actually more impressed with her playmaking than her shooting, although she did score 23 after a slow start. One of the things that a rookie oftentimes has trouble doing is letting the game come to them. But she did. And some of her dimes were absolutely spectacular. I mean, it was a 1-point game after 3 quarters, but Indiana closed out with a 33-17 final quarter, a very impressive win. I mean, the Fever are peaking at the right time. With that win on Sunday, they started 1-8, but since then they're 12-7. Currently 7th place in the WNBA standings. The top 8 make the playoffs, and they've got a 3-game cushion over the number 9 team, Atlanta. As Ross mentioned, she leads the WNBA in assists. Unfortunately, she also leads the WNBA in turnovers, perhaps not surprising because she has the ball in her hands so much. She's second in minutes played. And look, it's going to be a real tough call between her and Angel Reese for Rookie of the Year, because on Sunday, Angel had 19 points and 20 rebounds for the Chicago Sky. So this, I said a few weeks ago, I'm getting like a Magic versus Larry WNBA vibe from these two rookies, and nothing has really changed my mind about that. But kudos to Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, who are truly like peaking when it matters most.
Now, World B, before I get your thoughts, I have a question for you, Bruce, because you weren't here on the show last week. But we had discussed the fact that in 2028, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are going to have to be teammates on Team USA. I mean, they're two of the top players in basketball. How do you think that's going to work out between those two players from what we see so far?
I believe that ball respects ball, okay? I think these two guys, gals, are ballers. They play a different game. I think they'll be just fine. I have a funny feeling that as the years go on, they're going to kind of understand that in some ways they kind of complete each other as far as promoting the league. So I have every confidence that their relationship may not be like, super warm and fuzzy, but I'm quite certain there will be mutual respect between those two.
Love to hear it. World B, what's your take on Caitlin Clark this year and what you've seen from the Fever?
Well, respectfully to Bruce, I don't think it's going to be much of a contest anymore at this point. I'd be stunned if Caitlin Clark did not win Rookie of the Year. Here's a list of players in the WNBA who are averaging at least 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Caitlin Clark, and that's it. There is no one else. She's the only player doing that. Her last 21 games, 18.5 points, 9 assists, almost 6 rebounds. She's starting to really find her game, as it were, get used to the world of the WNBA. Think about this with the Fever. They have since the beginning of June, they're tied for the 4th best record in the league. They're suddenly in playoff contention. They're beating teams that beat them up earlier. They had a killer schedule to start their first 4 games were against the Liberty, 2 against the Liberty, and 2 against the Sun, who are only the 2 best teams in the league. This wasn't an accident. I'm pretty sure the WNBA set this up to let Caitlin Clark get some lumps or whatever, learn the WNBA game, and now the schedule gets a little bit easier. They get a little bit better, and now all of a sudden they're beating teams like the Storm. They're beating teams like the Phoenix Mercury 3 times in the last 3 weeks or whatever. In the last 6 wins, Phoenix 3 times, the Liberty, Minnesota, Seattle, all teams ahead of them in the standing. They're winning these, and Seattle game was a blowout. They're winning these games that they were taking their lumps early on. So they're absolutely having a terrific season all of a sudden, like it's 12-7 since the beginning of June, and they're tied for the 4th best record, as I mentioned, since the beginning of June. They're in the upper level of the league in offensive efficiency. They're the 3rd best shooting team in the league, and Caitlin Clark is a huge reason for this. And I think this is just the beginning. What we're seeing right now is really just the beginning. In another year, oh my goodness, she's going to be up for MVP. I pretty much can pencil that in.
I was watching her body language in the game and watching the reactions of her teammates as she was, doing work out there. You can see she's almost like the leader of their team already. If you look at how the other players react to what she does, but look, she's given them she gave Lexi Hull so many open looks on Sunday, and Lexi was just like burying threes, like she was like 6 of 7 on threes. You can see that when you play that game, all right, even though she took her lumps kind of emotionally earlier in the year as some of the teams were kind of roughing her up a little bit, you can see that she is pretty much the leader of that team right now based on what I've seen. So kudos, Caitlin Clark.
Now, World B, real quick here, with Caitlin Clark not making the Olympic team this year, do you think that's helping them surge here in the second half of the WNBA season, that she had some much needed rest?
Well, I absolutely don't. I think it hasn't hurt them at all. Anytime you have rest, and if there's anybody, honestly, that needed rest, it would be Caitlin Clark after she just went through the NCAA season and almost stepped right out of Iowa and into Indiana, basically, and started that league, started up in the WNBA. So if there was anybody that needed a couple weeks off, it would have been Caitlin Clark. But they were starting to play well before the Olympics came around. And it was really, like I mentioned, playing a really tough schedule early on for a team that wasn't very good. Obviously, they weren't very good last year because they were able to draft number 1 and get Caitlin Clark. So, they took their lumps early on, but this is a team, obviously, that's come together, learned from whatever, developed. And like I said, now teams that they were getting beat on early in the season, they're now winning and winning convincingly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Bruce, there is some NBA wedding bells ringing, and it happens to be a Boston Celtics guard who secured not 1 ring, but 2 this summer. Why don't you tell us more on that?
I am a huge fan of guys who outkick their coverage, if you know what I'm saying. And Peyton Pritchard is definitely one of those guys. Last weekend, he married the very lovely Emma McDonald, and officiating, marrying them, was none other than Blake Griffin, who played just 1 season with the Celtics in 22-23. But during his time there, he formed some lasting bonds in that locker room. And one of the young guys he took under his wing was Pritchard. Griffin, as I said, officiated the wedding. And Emma said he was there since our 3rd date. He was Peyton's go-to guy when we started talking. He gave Peyton dating advice on what he should say to Emma. And what should I do? Should I ask her if she wants her own hotel room when she comes to Dallas? Blake was the big bro, and he told Peyton, this is what you should do, helping him out. And then he actually third-wheeled one of their dates that night. So Blake knew right away that Emma was the girl for Peyton. 6 months after they met, they were engaged. Blake was there since the start. So I don't know if we can call him Reverend Blake Griffin, but it was a beautiful ceremony. And if anybody wants to visit the ELLE website, which is a website I have never visited before, there's some really cool stories and a lot of cool pictures from the wedding. So congratulations to Peyton and Emma, and Reverend Blake, if that's what you are. Great job on the match and the ceremony.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine, knowing Blake Griffin, he kind of mixed in some dry humor into that ceremony because he's a pretty charismatic guy when it comes to delivering some dry lines. So I'm sure there was some of that mixed in there. But with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes Podcast on Believe, presented by Bet Online. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everybody.